So Peacemaker Season 2 came out recently, and to cut to the chase, it was a disappointment. I've been sitting with my thoughts on this season and what they were trying to do. With all the backlash around it, I just didn't want to make any rash statements like I've done in the past, especially when I myself was not sure how I felt when the show wrapped. But no matter how long I sit with my thoughts on Season 2 of Peacemaker, I sit here and wonder the same thing as when I was watching Season 2. What went wrong with this season? So in this video, we are going to dive deep into Peacemaker Season 2. What makes it work and fumble, but more importantly, why it is a disappointing DCU entry. Now, before we get into Season 2 and why it is such a mess from top to bottom, now, let's be real, I don't think anyone was excited for this show. He literally killed Rick Flag Jr. It never should have worked, but somehow, James Gunn was able to blow all our expectations out of the water. The story was able to tell a message around white supremacy and do it well, which was a story that is very risky, but it had a thoughtful meaning put behind it. The writing was just so smart. They found a way to balance grounded storytelling and science fiction drama. It pays off everything really well and has a soul. Now, was this season perfect? No. Like, I get it. The story is plain simple. It's just an alien invasion storyline with some soap opera drama put in there. A lot of the comedy at times can be straight up cringe, and that doesn't even mention how absurd the fantastical elements can be. At the end of the day, this show isn't for everyone. But outside of that though, this season was great. It doesn't really get a whole lot wrong. It's not the greatest season of television or anything, but it is still a great but not perfect season. It also leads into a future second season that could happen. So 3 years after the first season was such a breakout hit, we got... I think a lot of the mixed reactions just purely comes from people like myself who loved the first season and had really high expectations. So with that, we are going to be a lot harsher on this series. Something that isn't that bad, but isn't that good either. I also want to make something else clear. My issues have nothing to do with the cameos in this show. For some reason, people who like this season are acting like the reason people hated it was because of no action or no cameos. If I'm being honest, that may be the least of my problems with this season. Yes, Gunn did overhype it, which we will talk about, but come on. People's issues are not from that. Honestly, a lot of the good in this season is honestly incredible. James Gunn has said it's some of his favorite stuff, and while that is a double-edged sword scenario, you can understand where he is coming from to an extent. Prior to the release of Season 2, the expectations were high. Not just for me, for everyone. Not only because of how amazing the first season was, but also because of how much James Gunn was hyping the season up. James Gunn decided to hype the season up to an extreme, which I get it, it's his job. If he isn't glazing about what is coming up, he wouldn't have a job. While a lot of the times he means it, in this case he seriously overhyped it. It's not like he entirely lied or anything, like we did get a big cameo and set up towards the future, but that was never the issue. Like we said, people are acting like people are upset because of no cameos, which is just not true. If you remove the cameos, there's still a lot of issues at play. But at the same time, I do get where this is coming from. James Gunn himself said there were plenty of cameos and connections in the season. His words, not mine. And when you say that, you gotta deliver on that. So I really don't blame people for being disappointed by that. When this show hits, it really does hit like crazy. In fact, it gets so much right that it is a little frustrating. Just like the first season, the character work is on point. Honestly, might be a hot take, but I think they do a better job with the characters than the first season. Again, there are some issues with this, but I'll get to that later. John Cena has improved so much. He is in a state of depression after the death of his father, but also getting denied by the Justice Gang. It just shows us how much this character is thinking perfectly. Also, Amelia Harcourt, they improved her by a lot. I liked her in the first season, but she is just top tier here. Leota is once again a massive highlight. In a way, she is really just the heart of this entire series, and it just continues here perfectly. Her scene with Chris talking about how he changed her was a real gut punch. She is the reason Peacemaker is still here today. The same goes for the entire team if we're being honest here. Even some other characters like Sacha Bardot. When I first heard they were going to do this character, I really didn't care, and a lot of what was shown early on really vindicated that. But at the same time, when it goes on, this character really does improve, especially towards the end. She is a very complex badass. If we got a show with her announced tomorrow, I would be on board. There is a strong emotional core at the center. The show is more character driven. It's about trauma between these characters. It carries so much needed weight that the show needed. It also feels more ground level in its character study nature. But let's talk about world building. While that is a double-edged sword, the world building is well done overall. Specifically, the Lex Luthor cameo that builds on the DCU and the Superman movie. It doesn't feel like required and just builds the universe out. And there are many scenes like this that do this perfectly. The flashbacks we get with Rick Flag Jr. and how the QUC was found. There are just plenty of great moments that build the world out. The tone is also a massive improvement. This time it's more dramatic instead of comedic, and this time is way more willing to take it slow to tell its story. Which you may say is boring, but to be honest, I think this is a necessary evil to build the characters up. If I'm being honest, the dark, mature tone is such a breath of fresh air. Then we have the new intro. Now, I don't think it's as good as season 1. I might as well just say that right out the gate. It takes time to get used to, but as we get further into the season, it fits really well. The show also explains the canon really well. As we said with the Justice League, there are some canon issues, but they explain it really well. Just saying it was the Justice Gang all along, and season 1 is all canon except for one scene. It was a simple scene that explained the entire world. Then there is the multiverse in the show. I love what they did with it here. It is used to tell an interesting story around Chris Smith's character. It is a refreshing look at the multiverse. In a world where we just get cameo after cameo in the multiverse stuff, this was a more character focused one. It tells its story around Chris and it hits really hard. That Earth X twist, while expected, still hits like a pile of bricks. Also how thematically just adds to Peacemaker's character. It is the privilege he is so desperately wants. Not to mention how it plays into our world. It is, for better or worse, a reflection on the way we live. And they use it with social commentary that hits really hard. But also how Peacemaker is such a problem in the privilege and contradiction. But for every good decision this show makes, the rest of the show is kind of a mess. Anaconimos is fine, I guess. His compassion is great, and to see how far he has come since the Suicide Squad. But outside of that, this character is just okay. He delivers a lot of cringe lines. He doesn't do much besides help Peacemaker and shill for Argus. Not to mention, I despise what they did with Vigilante this season because he doesn't do anything. In the first season, he is front and center in Peacemaker's life and steals every scene. This time, he is sidelined and it is so frustrating. He is barely in his suit, which is a whole other issue. I get it for Chris because they want to focus on Chris instead of Peacemaker, like that side of the character. But for Vigilante, it just drives me insane. I hated this decision. There is some greatness in here, like that scene with him and Leota is great and Freddie Stroma is killing it. But overall, they wasted this character. Comedy is also a major issue, because like the first season, the comedy we would get, I would say this time, fails more often than not. The scene between Vigilante and his mother is so cringe, even John trying to distract Lex's goons. It's so distracting and really annoying at times. The show struggles to find a good balance between the serious nature and comedy. The dark, mature storytelling does it so well, but when the comedy hits its tonal whiplash that is so distracting. When we get to the end, there are some things that are just unpaid off. Like Keith being harmed, they just let that go. Instead of finishing that arc, they just forget it. Which you can't do when you're building a new story. If you're gonna do a story around the multiverse, pay it off. But they didn't do that, even if it works more often than it doesn't. Flag Jr. too. They just use him in one episode, then he's just forgotten. Like, it's just lazy writing from James Gunn. Getting back to the world building, while a lot of it does work really damn well, at times it doesn't feel like much is happening. Besides for the future, I don't think it does much. Say what you will about Creature Commandos or Superman, but those build the world like crazy. This season doesn't do much of that besides what we mentioned earlier. It does nothing to further the world building, and it was a bit frustrating. Oh, and don't even get me started on the runtimes. Those are just ridiculous. I get it, the first season also didn't have long episodes. I was never expecting this to be like HBO level long episodes. But let's be real, this is 3 years past the first season, and it is shorter than season 1. Even the finale is not even that long, and it has 14 minutes of credits. It is such a waste for a show that waited so long to have these short episodes. Even the villain, Rick Flag Sr., just doesn't make sense. I think Grillo is doing a great job and he is intimidating, but the problem is this character just makes no sense. I understand they want this character to evolve, but when we went from the man who is willing to protect his superhuman teammates in Creature Commandos to someone wanting to lock up metas, it's just out of place. Yes, he doesn't hate them, just the bad ones, but it just doesn't add up with the characters seen in the previous projects. But the biggest problem of this show is James Gunn himself. The music is so overdone to the point of parody. Jokes take over the suspense, and it feels like too much is going on, like what happened in the Superman movie. We see Checkmate form from Leota, Harcourt, and Bardot. Peacemaker gets stuck in an alternate universe prison called Salvation. While these are cool, it just feels like unearned setup, especially since it ends in the most pathetic season finale possible. In Creature Commandos, you know what is coming next. With that getting another season, it isn't the end of the world. This ending is the definition of homework first and its own thing second, especially since this is essentially the series finale. As of now, there are no plans for a third season, so ending it like this is like ending a show after it gets cancelled or something. If you forget that this episode is the series finale or the finale to the season as a whole, this is a good episode. When you look at where the DCU is heading, I am a little mixed on that. On one hand, seeing Checkmate formed is awesome, but I am not sure on the salvation part of this chapter. Not because it's too early, in fact, I really don't think that matters, but out of everything, we're gonna do that? For all we know, maybe the plan is to see this planet get filled with metas all over the place, but we don't see the meta-human threat. It is just mentioned. I understand it's a more lived-in world, so things can happen off-screen, but for this case, if you want us to believe in the threat, show it to us, so we believe it when it comes down to it. Personally, Peacemaker being disconnected to the DCU was a major mistake. Am I saying bringing John Cena's Peacemaker into the DCU was a bad idea? No, like they did it really well. And let's be real here, if any of us were in James Gunn's shoes, we would have done the same thing. Peacemaker was always going to stay, regardless of your thoughts on it. What is a mistake is making it this connected. The first season worked because it was so standalone. This season is forcing the universe to set it up. If this was more contained, it probably would have worked better. But because Gunn wanted to set up his future vision, it doesn't work as well. The setup and finale was a letdown. It just hurts both the DCU and the season as a whole. Now that we have discussed the good and bad of Peacemaker Season 2, I wanted to discuss something else. Can we trust the DCU going forward? After the disappointment of Peacemaker Season 2, is this a red flag for the future? Personally, I don't think so. I've talked to many people who have said they loved how this season went with its story despite its finale, then others saying James Gunn has ruined the DC brand after one bad project. Like, what? Imagine if after Iron Man 2 was messy, you say, oh, the MCU is cooked. Like, I get it if you have problems with it like I do, but let's not act like one project is the end of the world. If the next few projects are awful, then yeah, we can start talking about it, but for now, let's just calm down a bit. Either way, one thing is for sure is that James Gunn fatigue is starting to set in. People are starting to notice the tropes and getting tired of it. And honestly, I totally understand it. People even aren't trusting his word after hyping the end of Peacemaker Season 2, which I also get. That is why I am glad he is going back to the Superman world with Man of Tomorrow after this. Say what you will about Superman, but that film feels the least like a James Gunn film you could get. Yes, it has his style in there, but at times it does play it kind of safe, especially when you rewatch it after all this time. Man of Tomorrow will probably be fine, honestly, so I'm not too worried on that front, but next year is going to be so important for the DCU. From the beginning, Gunn has said he wants this to be a more universe-driven approach, less MCU and more Game of Thrones or Star Wars. Let creatives do their thing, and for a while that's what I thought would come. But now we have this project that basically contradicts that. So if he still wants that to happen, it's for the better that we get these totally unique projects. So it feels like a DCU, not the Gunverse. Either way, 2026 is going to be a very formative year for the DCU. It will be the first year without Gunn attached to write or direct anything, so I am hoping what Gunn said about the creatives getting freedom are true. And like I did for Superman, I'll be rooting for them as a big fan of DC and Marvel. So, those are my thoughts on Season 2 of Peacemaker, and it was a bit disappointing. I love Season 1, and I knew this was going to be hard to do with all the canon issues, but while all the character work and greatness from Season 1 is there, the writing is just lazy. The filler is insane. The unearned setup is unforgivable. The finale was awful, and it just isn't close to better than the first season. Season 2 has its moments, for sure, but it just has so many missteps in between there. What a major disappointment. With all that out of the way, what did you guys think of Peacemaker as a whole? Is season 2 a disappointment or an improvement? Let me know in those comments down below. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for future videos. But until next time, take care.